Why is it so hard for some in the media to admit that there are bad people on both the left and the right? Hey everybody, it's Chad Hasty, host of the Chad Hasty Show, which airs weekday mornings 8:30 to 11 a.m. Central Time on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 a.m. KFYO. You can watch the show right here on YouTube, and you can watch that from 8:30 to 11 a.m. Central Time is when we go live. So President Trump had another press conference, and Trump blaming both sides for the Charlottesville violence. President Trump coming out and asking, what about the alt-left? Everyone wants to blame the alt-right for what happened in Charlottesville, but what about the alt-left? What was interesting about this was the reaction after the press conference. Yes, it wasn't the most presidential press conference you've ever seen in the world. And yes, President Trump blamed both sides for the violence that occurred, but the president also went on to further condemn white supremacists. Let me read here from the folks over at Politico. Trump on Tuesday doubled down on his initial reaction to a deadly white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, laying blame on, quote, both sides and asking why the alt-left isn't being held accountable for the violent clashes. Quote, you had one group on one side, you had one group on the other side, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible. It was horrible. It was a horrible thing to watch, the president told reporters from the lobby of Trump Tower. I think there's blame on both sides. I have no doubt about it. Okay, what's wrong with that? It's true that there were neo-Nazis in the crowd, that there were white supremacists in the crowd, but there was also Antifa in the crowd, and there were members of Black Lives Matter and the Communist Party that were out there that were wanting to fight each other. How is that not putting blame on both sides? How is that not worthy of putting blame on both sides? The president went on to say, what about the alt-left that came charging after, or as you say, at the alt-right? Do they have any semblance of guilt? Trump asked. What about the fact that they came charging with clubs in their hands, swinging clubs? Do they have any problem? I think they do. Trump continued to comment on this. Trump described the alt-left as a very, very violent group that charged protesters without a permit to even assemble in Charlottesville. He reiterated that he condemned hate groups, but argued that not everyone was a white supremacist or neo-Nazi. He said there were very fine people on both sides. Okay, what's wrong with that statement? Now, before some people in the comment section post, oh, you must be a neo-Nazi or you must be a white supremacist. I'm not. There are people in this whole debate about taking down the Confederate statues that don't think it's right that you're taking down history, that don't think it's right that you're taking down statues. And guess what? They're not neo-Nazis and they're not white supremacists. They just don't want history erased. They don't think that's the answer. There were people in the crowd in Charlottesville that were, protesting that weren't neo-Nazis, that weren't white supremacists. They just didn't want a statue removed. On the flip side, there were people who were protesting, wanting the statue removed, who didn't have a violent bone in their body. They didn't want to attack anybody. They were just there to have their voice heard. Folks, we have to get over this idea that everyone is, a neo-Nazi or part of Antifa. It's just not true. There are good people on both sides of a debate when it comes to the Confederate statues coming down, and there are bad people on both sides. I think we can maybe all agree that if you're a Nazi, if you're a skinhead, if you're a white nationalist, if you're Antifa, if you're one of these militant Black Lives Matter protesters that just wants to loot and set things on fire, if you're a anarchist, if you're a communist, you're not a good person. You want to see suffering. You want to fight people. You're not there to have a peaceful assembly. You're not there to have a peaceful debate. You're there to fight people. And really, that's who we need to be focusing on, because those are the horrible people on each. And by the way, they're on both sides of this debate. And then caught in the middle are good, fine people who either don't want history erased or who do want history erased because they think it's racist. There's a debate to be had, but it has to be a peaceful debate. President Trump came out on Tuesday and said, what's next? Are we going to get rid of the Washington Memorial? Are we going to get rid of the Lincoln Memorial, the Jefferson Memorial? All of these are good questions, and here's why. These groups like Antifa never stop at just statues or just memorials or just naming of buildings. They keep pushing. We've seen that before with leftist groups. They keep pushing to get rid of things. They're never satisfied. And some of these members of Antifa will never be satisfied. So Trump was right in what he said. Now, could he have said it, I guess, a little bit better, a little more presidential? Maybe. But listen, folks, President Trump has condemned the white nationalists, the racists who are out there. Now the media is in a huff and puff because he blamed, once again, the alt-left. They should be blamed. You look at not only this protest, but other protests that have happened, and you've seen members of the alt-left or Antifa, the anarchists, the communists, who have attacked people, who have attacked buildings, who have attacked cars, who have caused violence at anti-Trump rallies, at other rallies that have happened in Washington, D.C., in New York City. You look at leftist rallies that have happened at UC Davis when conservative speakers have gone, when they destroyed parts of that campus. So, yes, there are violent people on both sides, on both the alt-right and alt-left. There are violent people, and they should be condemned. But there are also good people on the left and on the right. You know, those who are blowing up about Donald Trump on this, it's primarily because you just don't like Donald Trump. Trump is trying to be honest here and say there are two sides to blame. I agree with him on this. You can say that Nazis are bad, you can say that white supremacists are bad, and you can also say that Antifa is bad, the communist kids are bad, and so are portions of the Black Lives Matter protesters. Tune in to the Chad Hasty Show weekday mornings 8:30 to 11 a.m. Central Time. News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 a.m. KFYO. Hope you have a fantastic day. We'll talk again tomorrow.